Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Thank you all for joining us. Lance Sexton, SBA. When did you start your SBA career, Lance? Or your first SBA?
1984.
Oh, I beat you. I think I was 83. Well,
Bob,
we don't have to talk about ancient history.
Hey, Bob, I'll tell this story real quick. Reader's Digest version. First daughter was born in 91. I did an SBA loan. It was a huge multi-entity package. I used her red flyer wagon to drag it up to the SBA district office because I couldn't carry it under my arm.
I love it. Yeah, that's back when they remember the old IBM. Hey, all right, we got a bunch of news. We're going to, Katie, it's your job when Lance and I start jumping the shark like that to take Katie, our editor, undisclosed location out of Washington State. Katie, thanks for joining us. We have this is a follow-up from last week with John Winnick. We talked about Friday, and we were talking about cash reserves for our borrowers, but we're taking this one level up. What about rental property owners? And these could be people who you have loans to, obviously not necessarily SBA loans. Well, maybe, and I guess, Lance, in a 504 loan, you could have one landlord, but these are mostly strips, and these are mostly loans, conventional type loans. And I'm glad to see that response, Lance.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of contrary to what we have to live with credit elsewhere. We have to prove they can't get credit elsewhere. We're on a commercial loan to a property owner who's leasing it out. We certainly want them to have enough reserves to take care of emergencies like we're going through right now.
Right. Now, are these landlords, are they available for PPP loans?
It would not be available because it would not be an eligible loan in SBA's SOP. And they made exceptions. They made some exceptions in the hospitality industry, but technically someone who's leasing more than 49% of their property should not have been eligible for a PPP loan. If you're a landlord
and you have a couple properties and you're running a management company, you're eligible, correct?
The management company itself could be eligible for a PPP loan. You're exactly right, Bob. I'm thinking the owner of the property.
The owner of the property, yeah. And of course, this came out after John spoke with us, and they're facing a dramatic drop in income. What else is your research telling you, Katie?
I think John kind of covered it mostly on Friday. I think you are seeing, obviously, some of these landlords are small businesses, especially if they have a company that runs and manages these places. So they're obviously concerned about not receiving that money as well. So it's just, it's hard on both sides of it, because you could have the small business that's renting this place, and you could also have the landlord who's also technically part of a small business.
Yeah, and I love the last line on this, Lance. Most of the rental housing we have in this country is provided by individuals who are doing what? Running a small business.
Running a small business, yeah. That's absolutely true, and they're trying to find ways to just keep their mortgages current and hopefully to have tenants who can somehow pay their rent.
What percentage of your borrowers have exhausted their PPP funds?
This is, of course, there's not the correct. It's my view is somewhere north of 75, slightly below 100.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the audience got it. Katie, I think you reported today, what, 88%?
Yeah, Goldman Sachs had a survey that they did about a week or two ago, and their survey showed 88%. And of course, there's also the concern of 32% have now had to lay off employees or cut wages because that they've used up their funds. They need more help, more support. or they need to kind of shift their plan, their business plan, in order to really continue working. And so a lot of these businesses were waiting on more funding from the government or some kind of additional help of some sort. And it looks like that's going to be a little ways off.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. Let's go to our third poll question, which is, do you agree? We love doing these surveys, doing a recap. NFIB, who I respect, National Federation of Independent Businesses, they have they do a monthly optimism index. They're showing that it's increasing in August. Obviously, we don't know how to spell increasing. But your corner of the world, your footprint, increasing, decreasing, no change. What's going on in your corner of the world?
Well, and I have some knowledge and experience in multiple states. I think that the optimism in August is probably pretty flat. I think optimism increased in June and July, but I think August.
Wow, look at that! Yeah.
It's pretty flat, Bob, for two reasons. We can't get Congress. Everybody understands that there needs to be some additional support for small business. And, how long have we been talking now about Congress getting something passed?
Where are we, Katie?
Well, unfortunately, last week we didn't see the Senate bill pass. In fact, they turned that down mostly because of it's combined with some other measures that they felt that didn't really it didn't really help as many people as they wanted to help, and they wanted a more comprehensive bill. But unfortunately, that means as things get more partisan, we're looking at maybe not even having another bill introduced until after the election, which would be devastating for some of these small businesses.
Please don't say that.
Well, and this brings up a good point, Bob, as we go into the elections and we consider our people that are running for the House, people that are running for the Senate. We should be asking the question, what does SBA stand for? Do you have experience as a small business owner? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you support small business? Because we need more small business supporters. We've had bipartisan support for this, but we need patriots for small business saying, don't care what all the other stuff says. We want to get this passed.
Lance, tomorrow we have Chris Hearn, the president of a small business lending company out of Florida. We're going to talk a little bit about advocacy, and we're going to try to just dumb it down to make it really, really simple on things that need to happen. But I got to tell you, Congress has to hear from Main Street, has to hear from the lenders who are helping these borrowers.
Well, Congress, in March did an amazing thing. They all got together. They got a program rolled out. It worked fairly well. It did get support to small business, but now they've fallen back into their same bickering over points that don't really impact small business. Again, we need people representing us that look at this and say, hey, small business needs help. We need to figure out a way to pull this out and get it passed.
Well, business means jobs, and jobs, we certainly all need jobs. Let's see. Let's take a little detour, and we got some questions coming in. And Raymond says, has there been any reaction to the ABA's most recent letter to Congress urging them to strip out the PPP forgiveness bill and act on the House and Senate bills to provide forgiveness relief? Raymond, I think that's all bundled together, and the answer is it's part of the process, right? I mean, it's not. Unfortunately, there's not going to be one magic bullet that's going to solve all of these issues. So, but Congress does want input to solve this issue. Ask, when is the forgiveness? Bob, go ahead, Lance.
Raymond is experiencing what I and other participant bankers are experiencing. We have small business owners, Bob, that are getting very, very nervous about forgiveness because they've exhausted just what we talked about earlier. They've exhausted their PPP funds. They kept their people on staff. Now they're having to lay those people off because they do not have additional funding. While that should not impact their forgiveness because it should be outside of the covered period, you've got a lot of anxiety in the small business community right now centered around forgiveness.
Well, you have two issues. You have revenues decreasing, and you have lack of capital. So both of those are not winning combinations for a successful business, Lance.
Absolutely. And not just anxiety on the part of small business owners, but banks setting on hundreds, if not thousands, of forgiveness plans, which if they passed the simplified forgiveness would certainly provide tremendous relief for the small business community and the financial institutions that
I don't
support
think
them.
I want to be sitting in a room with my regulators if this is still outstanding. I think that could be a difficult conversation.
Well, and the other thing that's kind of interesting is the idle grant money. You know, several bankers and I have been bouncing this around, and it's pretty clear from information. Notice that the idle grant money is being reduced from the amount of the forgiveness. And we were talking about that, you know, if a bank, let's say 50% of their PPP loans had an idle grant of $10,000, there could be a significant number of PPP loans sitting on banks' books with a $10,000 balance at 1%. Well, multiply it by a few thousand. That could potentially...
And there's going to be a lot of those businesses who can't pay back that 10 grand also, well, especially if they close their doors. Hey, Raman asked the question of the day. We get this question all the time. I have no issue bringing it up again. But when is the forgiveness app due? And is it wise to wait for a waiver limit of, say, $150,000 rather than go through the existing complex process?
I'm of the belief now, Bob, that we should go ahead and move forward with the 3508 and the 3508. You know, I know a number of banks have been hesitant to open their portals, waiting on simplified forgiveness. And Bob, you know what it's going to take to get simplified forgiveness? I have now stated that I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. So it'll probably happen tomorrow.
Oh, God.
You know, I'm now telling those borrowers, say the under 150s, is not a bad idea to pick up the 3508 EZ and to start gathering some of the information because Congress may not pass this until after the election.
Well, my question is, Lance, are the logistics in place for the lenders to submit this information to SBA?
Well, I would love to hear from lenders throughout the country on whether they've successfully submitted a forgiveness application to SBA.
We'll follow up. Joseph, make a note. We'll follow up. And I know we did that poll a couple weeks ago. We had 3%. Actually, it's probably closer to, it was 0 for all practical purposes. Hey, let's go to some other questions.
A follow-up on that, Bob, is to ask them, have they had one approved by us? Not just have they been able to submit, but have they had anything approved by SBA at this point?
Mira asked a very common question, which is confusing. Lance, we have an idle loan. I don't like the idle terminology, but I will adapt your pronunciation. It said idle will not reduce PPP forgiveness, but the advance will. If they're both federal grants, it would be considered double dipping. So what's forgiven and what's not, Lance?
Well, the information notice that we talked about the other day, if you got an idle loan and it was used for something other than payroll, then typically you would not have refinanced it into your PPP loan. It'd be in the best interest of the customer. The idle grant is supposed to be forgiven, and there's some confusing language in an information notice that says that the PPP forgiveness is supposed to be reduced by the idle grant.
Right.
So here's where the confusion comes into play, Bob. Let's say they got an idle grant of $10,000. The participant banker realized that that is a piece of money that's forgiven. So they did not put it into the PPP loan. And then the SBA chooses to reduce the PPP forgiveness by that $10,000 idle grant, which is, again, a couple of bankers and I had this conversation. The information notice looks as if it would be reduced. Not fair. It's like it's double dipping on SBA's part.
Yeah, and then that's what we're doing on that. Very good question. Nancy, you are predicting the future. We're not going to discuss this today. Obviously, we're talking about processing PPP. We will talk about it this week. We will follow up on Lance's recommendation. And hopefully Lance is right now that he's gone out on a limb saying after the election, it'll be done this week. So
yeah, after I've stated it's not going to happen, Bob, it's just like we predicted something back in June and we fell flat on that one. So maybe now that I've stated I don't think it's going to happen, it will.
I think Katie was the only smart one keeping her mouth shut on that one. Let's see. Hey, shout out to our friends in Florida on Flagel. They have 2 new board members. Congratulations, Kevin Rafferty, Paradise Bank. Kevin, it's been a while since I've seen you. Congratulations. And Valerie Karen of GCF. So congratulations to you two. Let's see, they're replacing Fred Schmidt and Victor Diaz. And we certainly hope that next year we can do an in-person event in Florida. And we're going to have Jennifer Blooming on to discuss how the virtual events went and what's going on. Lance, we're going to do a special webinar on Wednesday, and we're incorporating, obviously, what is in the SOP. We're going to incorporate the changes in the SOP, but also importantly, we're going to be discussing that memo that is not in the SBA SOP regarding how to address the COVID issue for a small business applicant.
Absolutely, Bob. Underwriting has changed. In the not only in the SBA world, but just in commercial lending. So we're going to talk about developing a SBA compliant credit memo in the current economic environment that we're in.
Very good. Well, thank you all for joining us. Glad everyone is, we're starting to get back into the groove. Let's see, we got 2 weeks left of this fiscal year. And then we start all over again. Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Thanks.
Have a good day.